Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're delighted to have you all here. And I must confess, well, I'm not surprised. You know, if this was Americans only, there'd be about 7 people here on a Friday morning, huh? You know, nobody'd be here. But because of all of you, we've got a full house, and it really reflects what I've always admired about Japan is that you take such a direct interest in this relationship, the partnership with us, and it's so gratifying, and I just am so proud of that. My name is John Hamre, the president here at CSIS, and it's a real joy for me to be able to welcome all of you today for what's going to be a very important conversation. I want to say thank you to the Mount Fuji Dialogue. You know, all the Japanese know what this is, but for the Americans here, Mount Fuji is a unique forum that Nikkei started and created for a strategic high-level dialogue between the United States and Japan on security issues. And I think it was one of the most important ways in which we've made progress these last 6, 7 years. And the progress these last 3 years has been breathtaking. Just breathtaking, the changes that have taken place. And it's so gratifying for me to see how Japan is embracing its larger responsibilities in the region. In the past, it was always ambivalent about defense. We understand why. We know the history. But now they understand that this is a responsibility we have together, and we have to do it together. It isn't just a Japan's responsibility or ours alone. We now have to be partners, and equal partners, more than ever. There are some very important issues that are before us. Japan is soon going to establish the Joint Operations Center. And one of the biggest questions is, what is the command relationship like with the United States? And this was discussed when Kishida-san was here, and he had a very successful visit. It was really a splendid visit. But unresolved is this question of what is that structure? And how are we going to be working together? It's no longer big brother, little brother. I mean, we're partners side by side now. And we have to figure out what is that structure that makes sense. So that's one of the big issues that is before us. We should also be talking about, we need a stronger integrated surveillance picture in the region. You know, we no longer just kind of take little stovepipes, or we bring something to the table, you bring something to the table. We now have to have an operational system that's seamless and integrated across the theater. These are important issues that we now need to work through. We're going to talk about these things this morning. I'm going to turn to Chris Johnstone, who is the Japan chair here at CSIS. He's going to run this session. I really do want to say thank you to our panelists, and we're really grateful to have you here. And I look forward to listening and learning today. Chris, you take it over.
Thank you, Dr. Hamre, for those opening remarks, and welcome to everyone here in the audience and online. Really very much appreciate you joining us this morning. I'm Chris Johnstone. I'm the Senior Advisor and Japan Chair here. And before we get started, just a reminder that we have simultaneous interpretation for this session, and I'm told that English is on channel 2 and that Japanese is on channel 10. So please use as you require. But really delighted to have 4 distinguished guests with us here from Japan to talk about a really consequential time in the alliance. As everyone here knows, just last month, President Biden hosted Prime Minister Kishida for the first official visit of a Japanese leader since 2015. And I think it's fair to say that week, the week of events, was really an opportunity to showcase the strength of the U.S. Japan alliance. And the 2 leaders introduced several priorities for alliance cooperation going forward as Japan continues to implement an ambitious national security agenda. And we're going to talk about some of the key issues that the leaders discussed and that are on the agenda for the future going forward. But let me first introduce our guests. We're joined by 2 of the leading Diet members driving the defense debate in Japan, and 2 very distinguished scholars as well. So let me introduce them briefly in turn. Minister Nakatani Gen is a member of the LDP representing Kochi Prefecture, the 1st District in the House of Representatives, and he's director for the Commission on the Constitution. And as everyone here knows, he's a former Minister of Defense. To his right is Minister Onodera Itsunori. He's also a member of the LDP representing the Miyagi 6th District in the House of Representatives, and also previously a Minister of Defense, and remains a key leader on defense strategy. To his right is Professor Masuo Chisako, a professor of international relations at the Faculty of Social and Cultural Studies at Kyushu University, also an adjunct fellow at the Japan Institute for International Affairs, and she focuses on Chinese foreign and maritime policies, one of the leading scholars in Japan of China. And finally, last but not least, is Professor Tsuchiya Motohiro, who's a professor at the Graduate School of Media and Governance and Vice President for Global Engagement and Information Technology at Keio University. He's a leading cybersecurity expert, so we'll talk about some issues related to cyber policy this morning as well. So we'll have a bit of a dialogue up here, and as always, we'll try to save a little bit of time at the end of this session for questions and answers from our audience. But let me first start with a broad question for each of our panelists, and that is just to reflect on the outcomes of the Biden-Kishida summit, and particularly the outcomes related to alliance cooperation. What do you think were the most significant, most important outcomes of the summit? Let me start with Minister Nakatani.
はい、ご紹介いただきました中谷源でございます。
It's again Nakatani, and I'm very happy and honored to speak to you today. After the summit, we came to Washington, D.C., and I am enjoying the beautiful sky and the air of May, and everybody seems to be happy, and that is because the successful achievement of the U.S. Japan summit meeting. When I went to the restaurant, there was a menu, and the menu itself is good, but the dish itself has to be good too. So in Hawaii, there is a defense summit meeting, and the integrated operation will be practiced next year. So the new start will begin. And then in the summit meeting, there was a surprise that the Philippines president trilateral meeting was conducted. Philippines, as you know, we share the leaders, and from India, the Philippines is receiving a lot of ammunitions. Philippines, Taiwan, and Japan maritime defense purpose. The cooperation will be progressed, and it will be a very strong defense. So A2AD against A2AD, it was a very, very good dialogue, and in that dialogue, three pillars were talked. One is that the defense build-up and the equipment cooperation, and the C2, the command authority was in the issue. There are 55,000 forces in Japan, U.S. forces in Japan, and Yokota's doesn't have a command authority. And if the command and control is integrated, there are two plans that coordination with Japan and the command and control will be independent. So in the operation front too, the self-defense force will cover the Senkaku to Amami Island in the first island chain, and then U.S. has low MLR, that is to protect the island area. So the people and shelter and transportation will be deployed, and the hypersonic missile and the submarine, including the nuclear submarine, will be deployed over there.
And what is being discussed right now in Hawaii is to increase this defense cooperation and also the opportunity to meet on a regular basis between the two nations. That is what is being discussed right now. And secondly is the missile defense. In our mission, this latest mission, we have visited many advanced U.S. Military defense industries. We are in the area of C2, computer, drone, AI. These are the type of technologies that are necessary for us, the military base, to make decisions. So U.S. and Japan will have separate commands. However, the source of information is the same. And the decision also must be made instantaneously on either side. So how to share information or intelligence is a big issue that we have right now. So we need to continue to deepen the ability to share knowledge between the two nations. So I believe that this will be a turning point between our two nations, and we must work earnestly on this. And also the U.S. and Japan cooperation. FMS is something that I'm thankful for in terms of technology transfer, but this is not sufficient for Japanese defense industry to grow. Therefore, we must have a system in which Japanese industry have the full ability to develop and to sell their products in the market. So we must need to think of ways to strengthen that system for Japan, and we are determined to do so. Lastly, in terms of Ukraine, Japan must think seriously as far as how we can support Ukraine from the medical side or the humanitarian side. And lastly, I served as under the Kishida administration, I served as the Assistant Secretary of State for International Human Rights Affairs. This has to do with child labor, forced labor. This is something that we must not allow. And also, there is a Uyghur sanction or other sanction laws that U.S. has. Now, Japan does not have such laws. So my belief is that Japan also needs to deal with these human rights issues. But one thing I can say is that, under the umbrella of democracy, by forcing this notion of human rights is not going to be too effective when it comes to Global South. So Japan is actually pretty good in this area because we are well trusted among different nations, and we can exercise that trust in the diplomatic scene. So my belief is that Japan can support firmly with that benefit that we have in our U.S. and Japan relationship. And so I am determined to work hard in this area. So thank you very much.
Terrific. A great reference to command and control, missile defense, deeper defense industry cooperation, and other issues. I think that's a terrific set. How about Onodera Sensei? How would you think about the major outcomes from the summit?
First of all, I believe that this latest summit resulted in a very rich outcome, particularly in the defense area. These past few years, there were many legislative changes or changes of interpretation in Japan in the defense area. We were also able to establish more defense budget. So my understanding is that these are the items that were spoke about at the summit meeting. And we also, I believe that they were able to confirm the or share what we both nations think are the problems or issues that we both share. And in terms of ammunition and in weapons, this is not something that only Japan is faced with, but NATO and in U.S. also are still struggling with the production capability. Russia has, 3 million production capability with ammunition, but the U.S. it is 1.2 million. So this is an area that needs to be worked on. So on the Western side, there needs to be strengthen defense capability, and then so that we can support any other country that is being attacked through ammunition or weaponry support. To have that kind of support system will serve as a deterrence and increase capability. And then, given that context, Japan has been working very hard in changing principles on transfer of technology and military equipment. Thus far in Japan, to transfer military technology overseas, Japan has been really staying away from it for a while. However, there are certain items that are there are certain items that will be allowed from Japan to be transferred out to countries such as the United States. So, for instance, Patriot system to be exported. This is an area that is being worked on, and in Japan, to sell our military equipment to United States. I believe this is the first since the end of the World War II. And also, and what was being produced, or even if it's a lethal weapon, under this new principle, Japan is now able to transfer such items overseas. Now, in terms of exactly what can be transferred out, this is something that the administration or at the national diet level need to be deciding. However, to have the to transfer technology and military equipment to our like-minded countries, such as ammunition and in different defense system, it will be important, and for that to be done under teamwork. And as far as what this would allow is that we can have a strong team to go against the other side of the team. And then, so die-cast has been set forth this time for the defense industry. And there are items that are allowed to be produced in Japan, and then also to be transferred out. This is an area that will be discussed. And say, let's, for example, a shipyard are stopped at the Yokosuka port, and it will take 3 months for improvement or maintenance. But there are, and then there will be travel being done between two different ports, which would, for another maintenance, but they will take too much time. So under the new regime, there will be, the Yokosuka port would be allowed to share more of the burden of the work. And so 2 years ago, there was, this is included in the revised defense, national defense strategy that was revised 2 years ago. Also, in terms of cooperation between U.S. and Japan, and cybersecurity is another area that I can talk about. Thus far, in Japan, we did not have a security clearance system, which was a hindrance in terms of sharing information. However, security clearance, the new security clearance bill will be passed this month in Japan. So under this new security clearance system, the idea is to share more information and to share in terms of defense and then operation. Another issue that I would like to speak about is cybersecurity. Japan does have a vulnerability in cybersecurity due to the extremely rigid legislative regime in Japan. So we are trying to identify and what type of legislative changes we must do in order to allow different cyber awareness and then allow us to attack the other country.
So from legal point of view and the practice point of view, we have been researching about that. And the legislation will be established later. And as a Liberal Democratic Party, after I'm coming home in Japan, we would like to start a discussion about this. And also the government is under consideration about the revision of law. Dr. Tsuchiya and other experts of cyber will join this group, and we would like to establish the bill, and we would like to pass the bill as soon as possible. Maybe in autumn this year, we would like to have a major progress. This kind of incremental effort, not only in Japanese effort, but the U.S. support is very, very important. So the summit meeting was very important to the U.S. Japan defense, and then we will build a stronger deterrence capability.
It's industry cooperation as well as the prospects for the cybersecurity law. I think those are very important points, but let's continue down the line. Matsuo Sensei, would you share your thoughts on the outcomes of the summit? And also, to the extent you are able, I'm interested, how do you think China is viewing all of this progress in the U.S.-Japan alliance and with other relationships as well?
Okay, it's my great honor to be able to speak in this great opportunity. So as I have no capacity to compete in discussing the achievements made by the two countries in front of those who have actually achieved those, I'd like to shed light on what they really mean in history. If I am to write the global history in future, I will probably interpret the summit as the most significant step for the liberal world to forge a network of military cooperation in the Indo-Pacific side that can counterbalance the authoritarian states. So Japan has decided to establish the Joint Operation Command together with the Americans to expand the possibilities of joint weapon production with the like-minded countries and to discuss the security affairs in the Japan-US-Filipino summit. This network may not develop into a firm and robust alliance like NATO on the Atlantic side, but take more ad hoc and flexible shape. But it will function like similarly to NATO. So why did it happen? As somebody who has always wished for good Sino-Japanese relations, I am very sad to say that it was the Chinese behavior that on the East Asian water that brought this change. China has been bullying all of its maritime neighbors in East China Sea, South China Sea, and across the Taiwan Strait in the last 15 years or so. At first, each was facing against this coercion separately. However, Beijing's continuous and growing pressure has gradually pushed us to forge stronger cooperation on this issue. From this perspective, it was natural for Japan to take the lead in this change because it was Japan that China enjoyed bullying from the very initial stage. If we look back the history as we have seen before, as if we have seen in East China Sea issue, including the Senkaku Island issue. It started from China's regional behaviors. However, unfortunately, it will significantly impact its global strategy. So I think, as far as I know, each country looks at the global situation from their own perspective. And China has its own concern. China feels it's threatened by the American alliance network and also by some of the behaviors made by neighboring states. But I think the order is vice versa. China has been challenging our sovereignty, and China didn't really recognize the equal rights to other neighboring countries. So, and China, I know China has always afraid of NATO being expanded to the Indo-Pacific side, but unfortunately, I think that's what is happening because of its own behaviors.
China is creating the security environment it seeks to avoid, in essence, yeah. Thank you, Masuo-sensei. Tsuchiya-sensei, how would you view the developments in the U.S.-Japan relationship?
Thank you very much, Chris-san. So I'm Motohiro Tsuchiya, professor at Keio University, and I'm currently serving as vice president of the university. So, but it doesn't mean I'm number 2. So we have 10 vice presidents, actually, and we have a Chinese Communist Party style. We have an order of the 10, so I'm number 8, actually. So nobody. But I'm in charge of global engagement and information technology, so that's why I will talk about something beyond cybersecurity. I want to talk about cybersecurity later, but before that, I have something to mention after the summit talks. One is that, from my perspective, I believe this is the first time in our university history that Keio University was mentioned in the joint statement. So I want to quote, "We applaud the establishment of $110 million in new AI, artificial intelligence research partnership between the University of Washington and University of Tsukuba, and between Carnegie Mellon University and Keio University," unquote. So this was a surprise because Prime Minister Kishida graduated from our rival university, Waseda University. But anyway, technologies were mentioned many places. So AI, social media, quantum, semiconductor, bio, clean energy, and space. So those technologies are related to research and education in universities. And democracy is a very important keyword at the summit talk. But democracy might be at risk all over the world. And I see news in US media that demonstration in US universities. Free speech, academic freedom, access to higher education, these things are very important values for universities and in democratic countries like US and Japan. So last year, I went to see Prime Minister Kishida because Keio University is a part of the U7 Plus Alliance. So related to G7, we have many, many sevens. Women 7, business 7, labor 7, something 7. So we organize University 7 Plus. Plus means that we want to include global South universities in democratic countries. And we made a statement to proposal to the G7 leaders. So education is very important. It's the basis of the, our alliance. And we said in the statement last month, it said, quote, "Building on the memorandum of cooperation in education signed between us on the sidelines of the G7 Leaders Summit in Hiroshima, today we announce our commitment to increase student mobility through the new 12 million Mineta Ambassadors Program, MAP, Education Exchange Endowment, established by the U.S. Japan Council," unquote. So I want to welcome more American students coming to Keio University, Waseda University, and other universities. And I want to send Japanese students to American universities, American schools. So Prime Minister Kishida mentioned he studied in New York when he was a child. It was a good basis for his life. And so I have the same experiences for Japanese American students. But I want to complain about very, very weak Japanese yen. So it's a good advantage for American students to come to Japan. But we have very struggling to send our students to the United States. But this is a very good basis for the Japan-US alliance. I have many, many more things to say, but so I will stop here.
No, that's terrific, Chia-sensei. You know, in our recent Armitage and I report that we released last month, we highlight this issue of the importance of people-to-people ties and rebuilding the pipeline of students and others focused on the relationship. So I think the work you did in support of the summit is really very important. So thank you. Let me, if I could, turn back to our visitors from the Diet and follow up on a couple of issues. First, let's talk a bit about cybersecurity and the legislation, if I may. Onodera-sensei, you mentioned this in some detail, so did you, Nakatani-sensei. And I'm wondering if you could say more about sort of the way ahead on and the prospects for passage, perhaps in the fall, of the new legislation. My understanding is that the key elements of potential legislation would include raising standards for cyber defenses across the Japanese government and in cyber infrastructure, or critical infrastructure, through a central organization that might be established inside the Cabinet Office, improving public-private information sharing related to cyber threats, and then, just as you said, this active cyber defense capability. As it is in our country, my understanding is that some elements of this are controversial, right? And Article 21 of Japan's Constitution has particular protections related to privacy. How do you see the movement forward on this legislation? Perhaps I could start with Nakatani-sensei and then go to Onodera-sensei.
はい。これ
Yes, yes, there is some gap between U.S. and Japan in this area. So lately, there's something called IPAC. There is a sort of a caucus among different lawmakers to deal with different issues related to China. So recently, there was a Chinese hacker. So U.S. administration or FBI actually sued China. And so I'm actually a part of this IPAC. I represent Japan. So that means that, China is attacking myself as well. And I actually asked the authority, am I okay as far as my cybersecurity? Apparently I'm okay so far, but there really isn't in Japan. There is no criminal law in Japan in regards to cyber. And to find the source of that cyber attack is something that is hard to do because it has to do with personal information. And so to enable the discovery of the source of cyber attack, that is something that Japan does not have a good legislative system either. So this is something that needs to be done. And cybersecurity risk, or NISC, is there's an authority. However, it does not have a legally binding authority. So we must strengthen the authority of this organization. So I hope that we can do this as soon as possible. This is my hope. And another thing I'd like to talk about is, you see, we are in an era where we use a cyber, UAV, drone. These are going to be the main fighting sources in any war. And in Ukraine, there is a SAV was able to sink and completely demolish the Russian ships and aircraft carriers by a third. So, and also, there is a big radar on the mountain area of Taiwan, which U.S. is said to have cooperated, and there's a lot of information being gathered here. But there is a lot of areas where Japan can improve in order for us to obtain and share different information with other countries. And also, in terms of nuclear weapon, a smaller type nuclear weapon that can be mounted on different vehicles in China and Russia. And then I hear that there's development being progressed. So we must meet this or counter this development that is taking place.
Sensei?
In terms of the cyber area, there are various activities taking place. In Japan, the Japanese constitution restricts or emphasizes on the protection of telecommunication. However, prior to an actual war, there is a situation or possibility that Japan might be subject to a cyber attack. So there must be a new legislative change to meet this hypothetical situation. And in this fall, in terms of the new legislation that will be deliberated, I believe that we must deepen our discussion on the Diet, and we also need to think about how to explain what we deliberate to the Japanese public. Let me think about a hypothetical situation. If companies are attacked by a cyber attack, what kind of attack they were, we must understand the situations correctly, and then there must be a system in which the companies can report to the government the fact that they were attacked. Because if we don't share the information, then the others cannot be prepared for a potential attack to themselves. So how to convey the information to the Japanese government, we must mandate that. Now, we must think about how to go about that. And another thing that is important or difficult is that I believe it's important to study and investigate various potential areas that can be attacked during peacetime. So yesterday, I met with the U.S. government official on this very matter, and my hope is that we can establish a new legislative structure in Japan to meet this potential problem. Thirdly, if there is a cyber attack to Japan, we can demolish a server on the other side as a counterattack. But the Japanese legal system must allow that. Because if you think about it, if you receive a missile attack, Japan is now able to conduct a counterattack. That is a new interpretation of the Japanese government. So in the cyber space, we must think about ways to cyber counterattack. And in terms of this new legislative system, this is something that is already being deliberated at the Diet. But as far as how we can strengthen the cybersecurity capabilities, Japan needs the advanced technology from the United States. So I believe that the summit, the most recent summit, has confirmed that, and then the relationship or cooperation in that area. So it's very reassuring.
For your perspective on the cyber issue, and maybe in addition to sort of your perspective on this legislative effort, there is this question, as Onodera Sensei said, about how to build cyber capacity. The people skills, the skills in the Japanese workforce. I wonder what thoughts you have on that question, because it's certainly a challenge here too.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the two ministers already mentioned what I wanted to explain, but so I want to reframe them in my way, and I want to go back to the people talent. I was involved in the drafting of the 2018 National Defense Program Guidelines, 防衛計画の大綱 in Japanese. So it said it allowed Japan to counter-strike in cyberspace. It was a big step forward, actually. And so it means that if you hit me first, I can hit you back. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a kind of deterrence. So it was a big thing for me, and I was somehow satisfied with that. But when 2018 22 national security strategy came out, I was so much surprised. Wow, that's my reaction to the national security strategy. And I want to quote, it says, in order to ensure secure, stable use of cyberspace, especially the security of the nation and the critical infrastructures, the response capabilities in the field of cybersecurity should be strengthened, equal to or surpassing the level of leading Western countries, unquote. What do you mean? Equal or surpassing the level of leading Western countries? We go beyond the United States? We go beyond the United Kingdom? We go beyond China? I'm not sure. I was so surprised. And I bumped into a government official one day, and I asked him, what do you mean by that sentence? He said, we should have a very higher goal. That's it. So I was disappointed. But now we are trying to achieve that goal. So it's a very big thing. And so now we are in a very important phase. The government will call for an expert group, as Honorable Sensei said, in cyber attacks for active cyber defense. We still don't know the definition of active cyber defense, but the national security strategy is listing 3 important points. First one is information sharing. The second one is detect the servers and others of enemies. So it's a kind of attribution. And third one is penetrate and neutralize attackers' servers. Wow. So if we can identify enemies in China, in Russia, in North Korea, or Iran, we can penetrate into their servers and neutralize. It means stop their servers. Wow, it's a big thing for Japan. Can we do that? That's a big discussion now. And maybe these things are boring for American audience. You are doing, so National Security Agency, U.S. Cyber Command, and FBI doing these kind of things every day. But as Minister said, so we have some restrictions, constitutional restrictions, Article 21, and so telecommunication business law, Article 4, those kind of things are a big challenge for us. I hope we can overcome these challenges. And after legal problems are solved, how we can identify good guys. It's quite difficult. Maybe university education is too late. We have to find those talented people in early stages. In kindergarten, maybe too early, elementary school, junior high school. So people say, parents used to always say, so kids, you have to go outside, play baseball, you will be next to Shohei Ohtani. But it's parents' dream, but we should say, so if kids want to play with computers, let's do it. So you are talented in computers, security. So it's quite difficult to find those people in Japanese society. So you have to go to University of Tokyo, you have to go to Keio University. So you don't need to play with computers, we don't need to play with games. But we should have these talented people in our security side. So it's quite difficult to find talented security guys in all domains, especially in cyberspace, but we need them.
Yeah. Kindergarten hackers. I really like the idea. Great. I want to ask our 2 Diet members about defense industry cooperation, then we'll close with a question on China from Masuo Sensei. But so let's talk for just a moment about defense industry cooperation, if we can. You both noted the steps forward that Japan has taken to loosen restrictions on exports and to promote a stronger Japanese defense industrial base. And Oldera Sensei, you talked about the urgency of allied defense industrial capacity. And as I said, I do think the steps that were announced in December in particular were quite significant. What is next, in your view, in terms of further loosening of these rules? I wonder, for example, there was some debate, as I understand it, about expanding the 5 categories of equipment that are approved for export, just as an example. And then the question of lethal exports. I do understand that the fighter aircraft program was approved for export. But I think there's a larger question that still, at least for an American audience, remains ambiguous about lethal exports. Could you talk about next steps in further loosening of Japan's rules related to defense equipment? Could I start with Nakatani Sensei on this question?
はい。まあ日本の防
Japanese defense equipment is supported by the private industry and depending on the private industry of Japan. But in order for corporate to make it, it has to be profitable because there is a stockholder, and then if the stockholder says that if it is unprofitable, please stop it. And there are a lot of withdrawal in the Japanese corporate. However, the exit is very important. You have to sell it, and you have to make profitable. At this point, LDP export and the production is fortified and suggested. However, we have to make a system, or we have to sell the product, and a buyer has to be established. We cannot only depend on the private industry. The defense industry and defense equipment has to be, this kind of sales has to be done in the state or the national level. In order to do that, the win-win situation has to be established. It's not the standoffish, but if so offset, if we sell, why don't you buy something? The offset has to happen. Other countries are doing, but Japan is not doing, and this is the profit-making things that it doesn't have to be the same in same defense industry product, but any other industry. So the advanced cutting-edge technology is sales point of Japan, and the private industry invested a lot of money, and then, for example, internet and the space information developed in this way. So we have to sell it, and we have to make profit on. When we see the Major League Baseball, there are a lot of commercial in the stadium. So if our Japanese defense industry's logo is stated over there. The defense industry is cutting edge and profitable and beautiful industry. However, the defense industry in Japan was in shade, so secondary. If we say that I am developing the new tank, it is very not easy to say that. So the defense industry was shrinking. However, the defense equipment get advanced, and if the price get higher, we can. The one nation cannot deal with by itself. So the multiple partnership has to be developed for the production and the use and operation of those products. That kind of system has to be established. If we do not do that, defense capability will decline. That's why the third-party selling of the defense equipment can be done. And then, if there is any consultation from outside, we will try to cope with that request. So please challenge us. And then the spin-off technology from the defense industry will lead the new technology in the future. After the World War II, the bullet train Shinkansen was developed. It was developed by the Zero Fighter engineer, and also the internet, as you know, was established in order to deal with the nuclear weapon, because that if the cobweb network is there, the communication can continue. So this will be the basis for other industries. In order to do that, co-development and co-production has to be done, and Japan has to have a good security clearance. This is many steps to follow.
Of the industry and our potential for cooperation. So let me close with a China-related question for Masuo Sensei, and then we will open up to a question or two from our audience. So we've talked about all the progress in the U.S. Japan alliance here today, and the other feature, of course, of late is the proliferation of minilateral cooperation as well, right? Just yesterday in Hawaii, the defense ministers of Japan, Australia, the United States, and the Philippines met and announced a range of new cooperative initiatives. Of course, as we've noted, President Marcos joined Prime Minister Kishida in the White House for a trilateral meeting. You can point to the Camp David meetings last August, U.S. Japan and ROK. And as you noted, Masuo Sensei, this is at least partly a result of China's own actions, right? The generation of a sort of increasingly convergent sense of concern about China's activities that's reflected in the emergence of these new groups. What is China's reaction to these developments? And do you see any evidence of a recognition that these developments are a consequence of China's own behavior, and any sense that there may be adjustments in China's strategy for engaging in the region to combat all of what we're talking about here?
Well, China has been very concerned about those developments in the last, I would say, 5 years or so. China has seen that there are so many unilateral framework going up. They call it xiaoquans, a small group of of Western powers, doing some very bad things in their eyes. But I think, but so far, China is criticizing this type of development. But they are quite concerned about this for sure. However, they cannot stop it. Probably it's a kind of security dilemma, but because they cannot, and they're not really willing to talk about this, negotiate about on these developments with the Western side, they're they're more prone to talk to the global South and try to win the mind and hearts and mind of the people in the developing countries. So that's why they've been trying to expand BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and trying to establish other regional frameworks in all over the world to strengthen their cooperation with the developing countries by offering technological support. Belt and Road was the old framework, but they are now offering those developing countries technological support and also police cooperation. I think this is a new one, but China is willing to export its authoritarian governance model to those countries, and that is also connected with China's satellite cooperation. By offering those new type of cooperation, China is basically inviting those developing countries to stand in its own hemisphere. So this is a new development, but I think I've been always thinking that this is a very, this is not really going very healthy for the global development, because it's been very clear that we are not really negotiating or talking to each other. It's been very sad for me to see that those China's recent developments in the domestic society due to those anti-spying activities. Now we have less exchanges between each other, and somehow many Chinese diplomats are very shy, and they are not really willing to talk to us directly. And but we see that they're relying more on the underground activities. We know that in Japan, some of Chinese authorities are trying to approach the Okinawan peace activists who are against Tokyo. So, we see so many behind the door activities committed by the Chinese side. Well, if we continue this, the global situation will be very nasty and will be in chaos. So, if China is very concerned about those developments, I hope the next step that they try to talk to us directly and try to manage the situation together with us.
Thank you. Very interesting, the Global South point, that this is the focus of China's attention. It's a very important point. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes, so I'd like to open the floor to questions. Please introduce yourself and keep your question concise. Yes, back here, please. Alex. Yeah, microphone's coming.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Malillo. I'm a senior associate at the Asia Group. Sorry, I don't need my laptop. On the cybersecurity question, I would like your thoughts on the fact that Japan seems to be balancing just on privacy regulations and cybersecurity between U.S. standards and EU standards. And as these cybersecurity regulations are developed and this policy is implemented, how do you see Japan balancing between basically the U.S. and Europe, and maybe possibly the opportunity of creating a global standard?
Interesting, good. Who's the right person to, Onodera Sensei, would you like to?
ちょっと質問自体
I just wanted to understand a little bit more about your question or the intention of your question. But in terms of the cybersecurity legislative revision in Japan, what we would like to emphasize on is and one of the factors is to really get understanding from the public. And what we are thinking about at the government level is we must explain to the public that we will implement these cybersecurity policy according to the global standard. And so there is a concern from other countries, if there is a concern from other countries that Japan may be deviating from the global standard, then we can stick to this explanation that Japan is based on that global standard. However, the current situation is that Japan is nowhere near that global standard. Therefore, that is where we want to head towards.
That's Kevin.
Hello, Kevin Mayer from NMB Consulting for the State Department. With the discussions going on at the summit and afterwards about the command relationship between the new Joint Operations Command and the U.S. Indo-PACOM, my impression is expectations are very high in the U.S. For example, that Japan would become joint and not necessarily integrated, but networked and joint and part of the Joint Fires Network, the PACOM. I just would like to ask your views on how forward-leaning is the Japanese government willing to be on this? Do you really want to be part of the Joint Fires Network, including the command and control, recognizing you want to maintain your own sovereign command authority, but are you willing to introduce the systems, the technology? And the reason I ask this is I hear some views in the self-defense forces that, the JLC is really just for the defense of Japan, or we have to do all our command and control domestically. I just don't think that's very realistic. But the fundamental question is, does Japan really want to be integrated and networked and joint with Indo-PACOM?
Yeah, so basic question. How integrated does Japan want to be with the United States? Good question. Nakatani Sensei?
Hi.
About 20 years ago, I was a minister of the Defense Agency back then, and At that time, there was only a joint command conference, so to speak. There really wasn't an authority to speak of in this joint command. And so that is when I was asked to consider the joint command operation. And then after then, about a decade ago, we were able to establish a command center. And then now we are about to establish this permanent head operation, integrated operation headquarters. But this week, as I visited many areas in the United States, what surprised me is that the information comes from the satellite, and then all the equipment instantaneously functions. That is something that is important. That is what somebody told us from the U.S. side. And so and then what makes a decision as far as what needs to be done is a computer in terms of what kind of military equipment is needed. And then one might ask a question, maybe a human command may not be necessary, but that is not the truth. U.S., human decision is still important. The human decision is crucial. And that itself is something that we need to think about. That itself is where U.S. and Japan must have its own command under its own sovereign decisions, and then how
反省してほしいなというふうに。実は
As an image, U.S. and Japan, there is already jointly done that is a anti-ballistic missile. When the North Korea launched the missile, we received the information from U.S. and then there are a lot of surveillance done in U.S. and Japan, and then find out what is the trajectory, and then if it is found that it will be land in Japan or in the peripheral sea, the base, which base or which aegis has to counterattack. So, and then we will decide whether the U.S. force or Japanese force is going to counter, and that. The command is done in Yokota, and then there are commanders from Japan and U.S. are in Yokota, co-located. So if in the peripheral area of Japan has this kind of attack, this kind of system will spread, and then it will cope with a lot of issues. One important thing is that the anti-ballistic missile defense, U.S. and Japan see the same screen and think based on the same information. However, when I went to the aegis of Japan, of U.S. and aegis in Japan, the information might be slightly different, or there is Nebraskan strategic troops. And if the information is seen, the U.S. information and Japanese information might be slightly different. So the U.S. has advanced information or intelligence capability. How far we can share the intelligence, that is a very important issue that U.S. support is very important.
I'm afraid, but this has been a terrific discussion with an outstanding group of panelists. So I hope you all join me in a round of applause for our group here today. Thank you very much again for joining us.